What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for FanDuel and DraftKings Conference Championship Weekend. We have Chiefs versus Bengals, Eagles versus 49ers, everything you need to crush the two-game slate on FanDuel and DraftKings. Second to last video of the year, of the season. Pretty bittersweet there, but I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined by Jack, owner of DFS Magic and creator of the lineup builder at Occupy Fantasy, and a proud owner of a Mitchell Trubisky Bears jersey. What's up, Jack?
Hey, just so everyone can see, right? Mitchell Trubisky, he used to be a starting quarterback, not a good one. And, I thought we'd have to bring him out, flashback to my first ever DFS win on a short slate. We've had a string of bad slates here, and just wanted to bring a little rally to the party here for our final two-game slate of the year.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there will ever be another Mitch Trubisky slate ever again, but in his memory, we have to persevere on. And so if you're new here, welcome. What we do in these videos, we talk about any injuries that impact these two-game short classic slates, two-game specific lineup construction tips, and we'll go through each team, talk about various low-owned plays that we like, different strategies, stack ideas, basically just running through the slate, giving ideas from a high level, mostly for high-risk contest, the largest field contest. So let's jump into it, Jack. We have two games. We have Eagles and 49ers to start. We have Chiefs and Bengals to end. Two fantastic games, I hope. And let's go through injuries. Unfortunately, fortunately, we don't really have many injuries to talk about, except on the Chiefs side, because they potentially have Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming back. They potentially have Jody Fortson coming back. They potentially have Mecole Hardman coming back. Now, reading between the lines from Andy Reid's presser, listening to what beat reporters are saying, they're saying it's most likely that Jody Fortson will be activated off injured reserve tomorrow. Clyde Edwards-Helaire maybe if they make it to the Super Bowl. And Mecole Hardman just practice it in limited capacity. So if Mecole's active, then it makes things really screwy. But also, Jack, the addition of these guys potentially just adds more lower ownership to some skill players on a high-powered offense.
Absolutely. We talk about this all the time, but in the two gamers, you really have to be concerned about uniqueness in a larger field contest. And trash players are the best way to do that. They don't look awesome to click in, but those guys that are getting those 50-60% snaps that are 5% owned, I mean, that's the difference between being duped like 25 times and a unique one. One injury I wanted to ask you about, or set of injuries, last week we talked about the Bengals offensive line a lot. This week it's all been Mahomes. So what's going on there? Is there anything we should worry about there? Because the Chiefs do have some good pass rushers.
So I guess that's something we should talk about, right? Because, yes, like you said, that was all we talked about last week. They made it out great. Credit to the game plan. Credit to Burrow getting out quickly. Credit to the backup offensive lineman who did a fantastic job. But again, we're still 1 week removed, and it is still second to last game of the season, and they're missing 3 starting offensive linemen. That should be a problem at some point. So I do agree, Jack, that Burrow is going to be one of the 2 most popular quarterbacks on the slate. Of course, there's only 4. But he's going to be one of the 2 most popular. If we try to think of ways that he fails, or if we're thinking of ways that we want to fade that and go elsewhere, that's probably the reason. But in conjunction with that, because Burrow is so popular and because of Mahomes' injury and his projection around the industry, we actually have Mahomes as the 3rd, if not 4th most popular quarterback on this slate, which is kind of shocking, and maybe more shocking, Jack, than the fact that he wasn't listed on the injury report and has no designation for this game.
Yeah, it brings back memories to my my near solo million on FanDuel Showdown, and it was Mahomes against Lamar Jackson, and our content before the game was you're never going to get him this low owned, right? And that's where we're at here. You're never ever going to get Mahomes, or maybe once every 2 years you're going to get him this low owned, and we get it. He's injured. There's risk, but is he more likely to be optimal in the field is playing him? We think so, and we'll get into those numbers.
I mean, if you just look at it, I'm going to bring up our Occupy model here really quickly. If we look at projected ownership, we have Mahomes at 16% on DraftKings, the 3rd highest, 14% on FanDuel, the lowest. And like you said, you're just not going to get a player of that caliber at that ownership on a 2-game slate nonetheless. I mean, normally we see those ownership numbers on a full classic slate for Mahomes. And it's funny because when you and I talked on Monday, pretty much immediately after the injury occurred, I think one of your first thoughts was, oh, we're going to fade Mahomes, right? Like, even if his ownership's negligible, right, we're not going to play him at that price gimpy. But then our tune changed over the course of the week as we looked at what other people were projecting him, his projected ownership. At the line movements around the betting markets have now swung back in favor of the Chiefs, and seeing him practice in full, which is just insane to see after how the injury looked.
Yeah, I don't know how he's doing that, but I think to your point of line move, I think we mentioned this to folks on other videos, but one thing Brian I like to do is look at other websites, content projections, and not surprisingly, they're a little bit slow to react to this late line movement, to the fact that Mahomes is looking good, and they're not just suddenly projecting Mahomes a lot better than they were on Monday, right? So we think that's a way that we can take advantage.
For sure. So you could probably see how the rest of this video is going to go if that's one of our first recommendations. But let's keep that in mind. And as far as injuries for other teams go, I guess Jack, San Francisco, McCaffrey, Debo, limited in practice. Elijah Mitchell, limited in practice. All these guys are expected to play. Does that concern you at all, or do you think it's just veteran rest at this point in the season?
I don't know. I did see a blurb that Mitchell actually is kind of questionable, but I think you just monitor it. You assume if he's active, he's going to play. We have seen the backup running backs, surfacing every week. Last week on FanDuel, we had a pretty crazy solo winner. It was a 4x, I think it was a 4x1 or 4x2, but they used Burrow and then both Mixon and Pirine. But it sounds crazy, it sounds awful, right? But on these slates where you have super expensive running backs and then super cheap ones that get a little bit of run, they can find their way into the optimals. And I think we can definitely talk about playing those kind of constructions on this slate.
Yeah, because the pricing dictates it. And one thing I will say is that the pricing on both sites is so dramatically different that your strategy and how you construct lineups will be wildly different if you're playing on FanDuel versus DraftKings or vice versa. I mean, we look at just here, Jack, really quickly. We look at the quarterback pricing. Mahomes 7,600 on DraftKings, Hurts 7,200. We hop over to FanDuel. We see Hurts 9,200. Mahomes 8,500, Burrow 8,300, and then Purdy all the way down 6,900. I mean, that alone, the Eagles pricing alone on FanDuel makes it a completely different slate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we're going to see is it's not going to stop people from playing Hurts, right? I mean, he's a top projected guy. They're favored, but it does mean that if you play him, they're probably not going to be able to use some of the nice pieces that he throws to, and that's a way we can take advantage. Whereas DraftKings, like you said, it's just softer, and so you have to look for other ways to get unique, such as those trash players that you highlighted and that we'll get into. Any other injuries, or do you want to try to jump into some of these games?
I think we can jump right in. I think we covered mostly everything. Let's start with this first game, San Francisco and Philly. And I guess before we get into individual games, we've talked about the two-game strategy at length over the past couple of weeks in these videos. Have your thoughts changed at all? As we've seen some 3x1s win, we've seen some weirder 4-0s win. Has your thought changed at all? Has the pricing dictated a different game plan? Are you more willing to play less game stacks? Are you more or less willing to X some quarterbacks out on this two-game slate?
I think the only conclusion I have based on last week is, get even uglier. I mean, I really can't complain that person won, with a unique 4x1 with two running backs in the same team. Like, it's something you wouldn't expect would win, but I think just continuing to, not make too many rules, not try to block too many combos. I do think, I will continue to stack just because of the, the leverage it has. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you have to just maybe be more willing. I'm still, especially on DraftKings, I'm still willing to overstack. Like the game environments haven't been great for this strategy, but if one game scores way more points than the other, which is possible with these offenses, with these different matchups, then you're going to be ahead of the field if somehow a 4x2, 5x1, 5x2 is optimal on DraftKings. Now, FanDuel, I think you still can get a little crazier, and the pricing over there dictates it that you almost have to be a little crazier or a little looser with your stacks and who you fit in stacks. So, once again, it depends on the site you're playing.
Yep, we're going to keep doing it. Our memories are short, but again, you had a win a few weeks ago. We've had a handful of wins doing this. I think you just got to keep running it. And yeah, so let's get into this first game here, San Francisco Eagles.
So just from a high-level perspective, you watch a lot of football. Curious on your thoughts on this game, how it plays out. Short spread, Eagles #1 seed, home field here. Purdy, the magic has not run out yet. Just really curious on what you think on how this plays out and what do you think is going to be important for either team to win?
Oh, man, X's and O's question, huh?
You had to.
I think the Eagles win the game. And, I think as good as the 49ers pass rush is, the Eagles have probably the best blocking in football, and Hurts is mobile. And this always drives me insane with San Francisco when I say this as a Packer fan who's watched them lose. They seem to play the same defense every play where they kind of like sit at the sticks on defense in zone. And like, if you're willing to run your receivers deep, like you can get open. And I guess I see a lot of opportunity for Hurts to buy a little time with his blocking and mobility and then hit his elite receivers down the field, which, we'll get into pricing, but on FanDuel, we think are probably not as popular. So that's how I see at least the Eagles side of the ball. I'll flip it back to you for the 49ers. Do you agree with my Eagles pick or not? And what do you see on the 49ers side of the ball?
I've been anti-San Francisco for the most part. Just you see Brock Purdy's advanced metrics, and yeah, watching him play, it's a great story. The magic is going to run out, but you have to figure that if you can beat Philly, it's on the ground. And Shanahan's fantastic at scheming up the ground game. So we could see if Eli Mitchell is healthy, if McCaffrey is healthy enough here, they do most of their damage on the ground and limit the overall scoring in this game. And that could be one way this stack fails. The other thing I think is super important, this is more of a betting angle, but Shanahan, notoriously one of the more conservative coaches when it comes to fourth down decision making, especially in the playoffs. He relies on his kicker a little too much, whereas the Eagles will go for it on pretty much every single fourth down, and that adds up over the course of a game when two teams are built this closely. So I'll keep that in mind. But as far as we mentioned this last week as Hurts stacks being way under owns and got off to a hot start last week. The Giants just didn't show up after their first round win. So assuming this game can stay competitive and we get the Eagles receivers ownership once again at 20% or less, this time on a 2-game slate instead of a 4-game slate, I'm willing to do it and just sacrifice the rest of my lineup. You play, again, if you're on FanDuel and you play Hurts, AJ, Devonta, 5,800 left per player, you can still make that work, but not many people are going to start that way.
Yep, totally agree. It's massive leverage, and it's kind of a weird way to get leverage, right? Because you're using all sort of relatively popular players, but you're just betting on people not using it. But the ownership gives it away, right? I'm on FanDuel. I sorted by flex, and you see, 3 of the top 4 guys in that game are 49ers. The only Eagle over 33% is Sanders. We have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith under 30%, which on a 2-game slate is kind of absurd, right?
Yeah, dude, it's insane. And if you look at correlation, I don't know if there are any 2 players more anti-correlated than Miles Sanders and Jalen Hurts, right? Like, I understand 2-game slate, you want to allow them in some lineups together, but actively playing those guys in the same lineup is a recipe for a lowered ceiling.
Or at least, right, the field is clearly going to do it way more often than it's optimal based on this ownership, right? I mean, Sanders is easy, favored running back, cheap, click it in. And then on the flip side, like you said about the, making the lineup work, that fourth stack piece could be a guy like Quez Watkins who, doesn't catch many passes, but when he gets the ball thrown to him, it's down the field. He can catch one pass and be in the optimal lineup. We have him 5% owned. And then the backup running backs for them, right? They catch some passes, they'll steal the red zone carry. So that's another way to get different playing Hurts.
I mean, we saw it just last week. Like, people won massive amounts of money playing Kenneth Gainwell with Jalen Hurts in stack. So certainly agree there. Mixed Goddard in a lot of different ways to play it. And so you mentioned Quez Watkins. Would you be willing to play him with 2 other Eagles receivers? That means you're generally getting only one max of Debo, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Juju, like these other guys that are playing on the slate. But again, we saw guys get priced out last week too. So
I'm gonna eat the medicine I just said I was gonna eat. I'm not blocking it. I'm gonna allow it to happen. If Burrow, Pirine, Mixon can win against Buffalo in the snow, then yeah, I think it can work. Like you said, with if one of these games, coaches get conservative and it just kind of shuts down, becomes a field goal fest, it'd be very, very easy for a lineup like that to win. What about on the DraftKings side? Obviously, we talk about that you can stack up to 7 guys from a team. How high would you go with the Eagles? And if you were going to go over 4, what kind of approach would you take?
Yeah, I would go 5, and again, maybe even 6, because no one's playing 6-man stacks, and we have seen them win at a non-zero rate. So I think if you're making 150 lineups, you have to allow up to 6. 5 is the comfortable max I would use, and even in small field, I think 5 would be the comfortable amount that I use. But that just means you play Hurts, Brown, Smith, probably Goddard, and then either Eagles defense, which is a stack not many people will play, or you mix in Gainwell or Scott, the cheaper running backs, because you're going to need some salary relief there. So I think that's the way I would play if I played a super stack.
Yep, I can buy that. All right, so I guess switching gears to San Francisco, how are you approaching the run backs, the bring backs in that game? Obviously I forget the pricing on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, McCaffrey's 9K, which is like, just crazy expensive compared to every other flex play on the slate. I mean, are you trying to jam McCaffrey in with Hurts or exclude it because it just ruins the lineup, or just kind of see what happens?
Yeah, I'll just build it and see what happens. I know running some builds today, even on both sites, not getting a ton of McCaffrey, and I see why his ownership is so low. I mean, he hasn't had this crazy role lately. As much as we want him to be number one overall pick CMC, his role hasn't really reflected that as far as usage in the passing game and even usage around the goal line with Elijah Mitchell getting some reps down there. So I see it. He's overpriced technically. But I think that's another way to get different, right? You play Hurts and McCaffrey together. I'm not sure a lot of people will be able to afford to do that. So the interesting question to me is playing Purdy stacks. If you play Purdy, you assume once again that the magic continues to run. Shanahan continues to run these amazing schemes. Can you play up to three guys with Purdy? I think you can. The pricing is pretty affordable on all the guys on San Francisco side. Brandon Ayuk, underperforming wide receiver. So a lot of ways you can play it. And Kittle is probably the guy we haven't talked about yet that is the most that sticks out like a sore thumb. His ownership and the way you put it to me before we started recording is that it's because he's not Kelsey or minimum price. He's in that middle range. And Kittle could
Yep.
very easily go under 20% on a two-game slate, which is nuts.
Yeah, especially when you consider, Mahomes is hurt, and the Bengals know it, and it's not like they're going to not cover for Kelsey. Like, it's very easy for Kittle to outscore Kelsey outright on this slate, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, assuming they don't deploy the Jacksonville game plan of just letting Kelsey catch every 8-yard pass every time Mahomes drops back, I assume they'll fix that this time around after watching the tape. Yeah, I think yeah, Kittle easily can. And if I mean Philly's notably good in the defensive backfield. Outside corner, they might get slot corner Avonte Maddox back. We talked about him missing last week. We saw Richie James end up in the millionaire winning lineup on DraftKings. Avonte Maddox could be back. That's hugely helpful for them with Debo and those other guys running through the slot. That would leave Kittle to get majority of the action and attentions from the offense. So I mean, his ownership is the one that just stands out to me the most on the slate.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. All right, so with Purdy, are you playing 4, 5 man, 6 man stacks, or what's your approach with him?
Again, I think you have to allow it. If I'm building one lineup with him, it's probably a 3 or 4 man stack, bringing back a couple of Eagles. But again, we see weird shit happen on two-game slates. I think you have to allow it. And they have enough weapons that aren't prohibitively priced that they can get there. And you can include the running backs. You can include their defense. A lot of different ways that 5 man, 6 man, even San Francisco stacks win on DraftKings.
Yeah, and I think there's an opportunity with them to maybe play some 4x1s, only because guys like Brown or Smith are capable of hogging all the points, right? So
True.
if one of them goes off for like 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, or it's just some huge game. You could see those four affordable Niners and then one Eagle. Or like you said, Miles Sanders is very anti-correlated to Hurts, right? So if it's unlikely against San Francisco's defense, but if Sanders manages to steal some touchdowns, it makes it very likely that all of Hurts, Brown, and Smith bust.
Yep.
So the 4x1 is more in play, I'd say, with San Fran, just because of the Eagles pricing.
Yes.
Um,
Totally agree.
any trash players on San Francisco you're interested in? I mean, Kittle, we talked about. Any of these like Jawan Jennings, um, Mitchell, or if Mitchell's out, would you play? I forget even think who the backup would be. Anything like that, or is that too crazy?
Yeah, no, I think you have to. Those are the only guys, though, right? Like, Juwan Jennings runs routes at a decent clip. Elijah Mitchell gets touches. And if he's out, they've shown they'll give Jordan Mason the ball, especially if McCaffrey's calf is limiting him whatsoever. So, yeah, it's really backup, a running back two for San Francisco, Juwan Jennings. No one else really runs more than like 3 routes per game. I guess the only one is Juszczyk, but he's a running back on both sites. So, can you waste a valuable running back spot on a pass catching fullback? That's the question.
Yeah, seems too crazy to me. I mean, he's always been playing Showdown, right? If he was a tight end, maybe, but I
Yeah.
probably won't go there, and then I'll watch him win a solo this week. But
What about the Eagles side? So we mentioned Quez, the running backs. It's really just three deep at receiver. I guess Zach Pascal runs a couple of routes, but it gets thin there pretty quickly.
yeah, I mean, just the fact that Quez and Gainwell will be sub 10, they get the ball. I think it's that simple for the Eagles, that you just play one of those guys Maybe Boston Scott. I think he only. Do you notice he typically only play when they're winning by a lot, or is it kind of random?
It's relatively random. He gets some first half touches here and there, and I was looking back to the game logs today, just looking like, oh, did they just exclusively use him last week because they were winning? No, he gets some touches every now and then. He's a guy that will get enough touches, and again, enough touches in a 2-game slate is like 4 or 5. That's enough to make something happen at his price and be worth playing in 150 lineups.
Yeah, so I think one of those three in 4x1 or 4x2s with Hurts is a good way to go here. Any other thoughts on this game, or should we move over?
Let's move on over to the second game. Everyone's super excited for it. Cincinnati and Kansas City. So obviously there are a couple ways that first game fails, and if that's the case, we can get a game stack of Cincinnati and Kansas City in the mix. But there are questions: Mahomes' escapability, Mahomes' health, Burrow's offensive line. These two teams knowing each other, they've been able to neutralize each other for the most part when they've played. So there are arguments for both games to fail, which just leads back to our argument, Jack, of stacking a game, hoping that the other fails, and just hope that they both don't fail, and then we end up some jumbled mess in the winner.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think when we talked X's and O's in the first game, we both came up with ways why the other team would score. I mean, I guess I don't know about you. My initial reaction to this game is kind of what you just said. I'm kind of thinking about ways these two teams fail. The familiarity, but also you have an injured quarterback against a quarterback with no offensive line, and yeah, it just seems like this game is maybe over-owned. Would be the observation compared to the other one. Just looking at like Chase, Higgins, Hurst, Tony, like got mixed and guys like that. They're just vastly more owned than guys like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, George Kittle. I don't know. What do you think? That's I guess my initial observation is this game just seems a little over-owned given the risk that it presents.
Yeah, and relatively even or relatively close totals for this game. Let me bring up the odds screen at Occupy Fantasy, our live odds feature. If we go to the totals, we see that 46.5 for the Philly game, 48 for Cincinnati and Kansas City. Judging by ownership, you would think that the Kansas City game is like 5 or 6 points higher, just looking at the ownership in the model and in the builder. So yeah, I'm with you there. And we've seen it. Burrow negate the deficiencies along the offensive line with quicker passing this year. Quicker passing leads to lower ADOTs, fewer big plays. Kansas City could conceivably run the ball more. Pacheco looked fantastic last week. They run the ball more, bleed the clock. Like this might not be the game that the casual fan or the person who hasn't followed that closely expect to see when you think of the Bengals offense versus the Chiefs offense.
Yeah, and I'm asking you. I know you pay a lot of attention to this. But sometimes the game total is maybe not as important as the move. And I don't know what you see in the Occupy, but I'm seeing a pretty massive move down from the opening total to the current. Is that what you're seeing? And do you think is that more cause for alarm than like if the game just kind of was a little bit lower but stayed pretty steady?
Yeah, for sure. Anytime the movement is involved and people just see the final number, I'm always wondering how that number got there. Because the DFS prices are built in based on that opening number. You got to figure these prices come out Sunday night, Monday, and it's priced on that opener or whatever opening odds DK is using in their own algorithm, so or FanDuel's using, or the algorithm that DraftKings is not using, given the pricing lately. So yeah, no, I agree there. Where did you see it open? Like, what number did you see?
I'm just looking at fancy odds real quick. It says this has 52.5 open down to 48. Is that about what you're seeing?
Yeah, I don't know if it opened 52 and a
Yeah,
half anywhere, but that wouldn't surprise me, I guess. But I guess maybe that's like immediately, or maybe that's like a pre-matchup before the Mahomes injury, because I don't know if, with the Mahomes uncertainty, I'm not sure if it ever got up to 52 in the real markets.
Okay.
Either way, the pricing is if Mahomes is fully healthy. So
Yep, I'm with you. All right, so we talked quarterback ownership here. Burrow, one of the top two popular. It wouldn't even shock us, I don't think, if he edged Hurts by a couple percent, just based on the pricing, at least on FanDuel. What's your approach to the quarterbacks in this game? Are you just gonna, I think we talked about probably want more than the field on Mahomes, but how are you approaching Burrow? Are you just gonna eat it? Or you think you'll be under? What are you thinking?
I'll probably be close, but closer to under, I think, just because I want to get over on Mahomes and just how our model is shaking out this week and how the builder typically distributes quarterback lineups. I'll probably be pretty even on the top three and maybe a little less on Purdy. So maybe something like a 30-30-10 split for me. What are you thinking initially?
Yeah, I might. I think I might go zero Purdy. Just I guess it's an assumption that like if he's optimal, game stacks have failed. I don't know if that's true. I'd actually love to do a deep dive on that, like how often a cheap quarterback wins in an actual stack lineup or not. But
The old
I just
Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy's done it. So
yeah, I know. Oh my God, yeah, he did do it. My initial thought was less Purdy for sure.
okay, we're on the same
Yeah,
page.
I'll probably get close to Burrow. Um, let's see. So what we talked about, I think, do we even need to spend much time stacking? I think, do we just kind of treat these guys as any elite offense? You can stack 4, 5, even 6 if you want.
Yeah, despite all the negatives we've tried to come up with, these are still two elite offenses. They made it to the Final Four for a reason. And yeah, you're going to stack them appropriately, especially when the Eagles could run the ball and run the 49ers out of the gym, and vice versa. 49ers could run them out, and we get passing attacks here in Kansas City and Cincinnati. So yeah, what's interesting to me, and I think the part we have to figure out, and I don't know if we'll be able to figure it out, and the field's not even going to give a shit about it, are the Kansas City reserve receivers, rotational tight ends. If Hardman's back, we really haven't ever seen a game where Hardman's been active, Kadarius Toney's been active, Watson has had this new role, MVS, Juju, am I missing? Sky Moore has been healthy. So it's all these guys, and they've only been
Watson?
active. Yeah,
Or
Watson.
Watson?
Yeah, and they've all been active together for one game, but that was Tony's very first game as a Chief, where he played like 9 snaps. So I don't really know how it's going to play. Beat reporters haven't really speculated. I have a feeling that they're going to play Juju, and they will play Tony because the field loves Tony on these smaller slates. Everyone else is going to get neglected, I feel like, and we have to take those shots.
Yeah, is it worth? I don't know if we have time. I don't know if it's worth getting into who plays outside and slot and how you might try to make those decisions in terms of custom rules or max one or anything like that. Do you want to get into that right now, or is that just like too far in the weeds?
Well, I was just really quickly. I was looking at it earlier, and you look last week, and basically no Kansas City player played more than 40% of their or ran 40% of their routes in the slot. They were just mix matching everyone, moving everyone in and out, and they've kind of done that all season. Hardman's run more inside when he's been on the field, but Watson's run outside, so it's hard to tell who's gonna lose what because they bring in Tony and they use him when he's on the field. They bring in Hardman and they use him when he's on the field historically. Sky Moore, he only plays a handful of snaps, but they seem to scheme him the ball a little bit. MVS gets his cardio. Watson gets his cardio. Juju apparently also gets his cardio, right? Like they're not really throwing to these other guys that much, which is kind of crazy. So it's just really difficult to say if this guy's in, don't use this other guy because all of them could play like 20 snaps and all of them could get there. There could be any two-man combination in this receiver groups that gets there in the optimal line, but I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, yeah. All right, that's fair. And I think for folks, then I think the strategy here that I recommend is don't try to pick one or not one. Right? It's more just think about the ownership. Right? If you're playing Kadarius Toney, that's fine. You should play him. It's just realize that that's not going to make your lineup unique. You're going to have to find another way to do that. Or if you choose to play like Justin Watson or Sky Moore, or I'm guessing Hardman will be low owned as well. That is a guy that you can get unique with, and then you certainly don't have to play two of those guys. And you probably wouldn't necessarily want to play a guy like Tony with them. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out like in a 5-man stack or something. But just realize you don't have to play like too many of those secondary guys. Just one to get different. Or again, if you're eating the chalk, that's fine. Just realize you got to get different somewhere else, right?
So here's a rule that I think can apply universally is max one of, honestly, definitely one of Hardman, Watson, Moore. And then probably max one of even Tony, Valdez-Scantling, Hardman, Watson, Moore, unless Mahomes is in the lineup. Then you can allow up to 2 probably.
Yeah, I can buy that.
Okay, cool.
All right. Any of the trash on the lesser owned receivers on the Bengals side?
Yeah, I mean, we get Irwin running 10, 15 routes a game. He's looked decent when he's out there. So then we have to consider Trenton Irwin. Tyler Boyd hasn't burned us yet or hasn't burned the field yet. He's been under 20% on all these short slates. Hasn't gone off yet, but he's out there, Jack, and he runs a lot of routes, and we've seen him do it before. So I think, again, Boyd has to be a priority when you're looking for a lower-owned player in your stacks.
Yep, and then we got to say it because he won. P Ryan. I mean, are you gonna do we go back to that? Well, he's not zero, but he should be sub 10%. He catches some passes. He's in the game. Kind of regardless of game script. It seems like. Is that one you do? And I guess the real question is, would you allow the lineup that won last week, where you play Burrow, Mixon, and Pirine in the same lineup, or do you say no, that's too crazy? That's never going to win again.
That that slot machine pool has hit once, and we got to wait another while for that jackpot to come back up, I think. But you have
Can't
to.
hit two nights, can't hit 2 weeks in a row.
No, it's not allowed to. It's not allowed. That's the rules. I don't make them. So, but P Ryan is very clearly their best pass blocking back, and if the offensive line issues show up at all, he's been the guy coming in. I mean, we've seen Mixon miss assignments, miss blocks, and being taken out for P Ryan. So I would not be shocked if P Ryan plays more than usual in this game. I think we have to play him as a result. So I mean, all these teams are kind of similar in the fact that they have these 1-2 punches at running back, and it allows us to get lower ownership on the second guys when the first guys are all getting normal ownership and everyone's overlooking the secondary options. I guess except for Kansas City, people are still going to play McKinnon and Pacheco, but it's these other three teams specifically.
Yeah, the biggest thing that sticks out to me is with this the running back situation is Mixon's price. I'm looking at FanDuel, but 8,100 is pretty insane for
Yeah.
his role, right? I mean, he's not catching passes, he's not super efficient or explosive, but his ownership's still pretty high because he's been favored for the majority of the week. There's not a lot of other good options. That's one that I find it tough to swallow to get up to the field's level, and that's more of a reason to me why you look at a guy like P Ryan, because if they're trailing or if it's just a low scoring game, Mixon probably needs 100 yards and a touchdown to make it. Other one, what are your thoughts on Kelsey? I mean, again, looking at FanDuel, 30% ownership for Kelsey in a 2-game slate is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, it's the pricing on FanDuel. It's crazy. It's tough, man. If you're going to try to fit in some of these guys, the pricing's outrageous. And that's why we have Hurst as the highest projected owned tight end at 40%. Going to get a lot on DraftKings as well. It's because of what he allows you to do with the rest of your lineup. And the field, as you know, as much as we bash them, they're sharper now than ever. They're not going to chase 40-point performances like they used to. So that's not a good. That's not going to give Kelsey a huge bump. And yes, people will try to play him, but this goes. I mean, everything is correlated, Jack. And if people aren't playing Mahomes, they're not playing Kelsey as much.
Yep. Totally agree. Totally agree. You touched McKinnon, Pacheco a little bit. I think we've said this the last couple weeks that we kind of just say you play both. You're not sure what's going to happen. Is that still your attitude, or did you see any clear trends last week that would give you an idea?
No, I mean I saw McKinnon's 1.5 points in my 4K lineup, so I saw that very clearly.
Oh,
Um,
I did not mean to set you up for that, by the
no.
way,
I'm
but
just no. I'm just saying like the game script wasn't right for him. They ran the hell out of Pacheco, and he looked good, and there was no need to use McKinnon as much. But as we keep saying this, it would not shock me if okay, it's a McKinnon game now, and it's LaDainian McKinnon, and he gets 2 receiving touchdowns around the goal line. Like that shouldn't shock anyone, especially with Mahomes' potentially limited movement. So again, you got to play because there's 2 paths there. Because like Pacheco, if they found that success last week and continue it and can just continue to run the ball with Mahomes' injury, Pacheco has a huge path to the optimal lineup. Or we've seen McKinnon in the past, if they decide to use him in quick game screens, he has a huge path. So I think you got to play both guys pretty healthily.
yep, I agree. And just we touched it for Cincinnati. Both in the same lineup without Mahomes, with Mahomes.
I don't think with Mahomes. I think you could do it without Mahomes in a game where they just, you know what, Mahomes' ankle's fucked up and we're not going to let him throw as much. Or like the game plan, yeah, let's let him throw. And he comes out, it's like, wow, dude, he's limited. Well, let's ride Pacheco and McKinnon. So I don't know if you can get all 3 together. I would limit myself to 2 of that group.
All right, we're not pulling the slot lever again on any of these teams. I got it. Okay, so we touched on the stacking, the lone guys, the running backs. Any other thoughts on this game?
I don't think so. Honestly, I think that's it. All 4 of these teams, would you consider not having a run back at all? Because we actually in this round last year we saw an LA 4-0 stack win. Would you consider that this year about any of these teams?
Oof. Initial thought was no, just because the spreads are so short. Yeah, I guess initial thought was no. I'd always do one. What about you?
I guess the only way is if the games are lower scoring and the scoring is concentrated on a higher price player. Like let's just say Philly wins, I don't know, 21-14 and Hurts throws to 3 different guys, but it's use check and McCaffrey to get the work on San Francisco side, right? And then the Kansas City game's lower scoring and McCaffrey gets priced out. Something like that. I can see it happen. I'm not necessarily sure we see a blowout happen in any of these games, But the pricing, I think, specifically on FanDuel, makes a 4-0 more likely.
You do bring up a good point. It's kind of hard to visualize these when you're building, but like you don't need a blowout for a 4-0 to be optimal, right? You can price certain guys out. That's a great point. So yeah, I guess you know what after that explanation, I would say you probably allow it only because break a little more of the rules. Let more weird stuff in on these 2-game slates. Would you delve to lower than 4-man stacks for any of these teams on either site?
I think you have to allow it in 150. I wouldn't specifically build that way, and I wouldn't hand build it. I would still hand build a 4-man stack or a 5-man stack with a bring back. But I think you have to allow it just because, again, the pricing and all these teams are competitive with studs and stars. So I think there are ways that, as we've seen the past few playoff slates, if all the games are relatively competitive, relatively similar scoring, which is not out of the question, then we see lower volume stacks win. So I think you have to allow it if you're building 150. As gross as it is, because we know the field plays it a ton. We just have to get different in either salary or ownership.
Yeah, I think one that we almost never would recommend this is with a guy like Mahomes, right? We'd always say stack at minimum of 4, but this time because he's so low owned, we think that I would say it is in play to just stack 2, again because you're not competing with nearly as many people, right?
Yeah, people might play Mahomes and Kelsey, right? Or like Mahomes and McKinnon and Kelsey. But if you throw in one of those receivers, like you play one of those guys plus Kelsey and Mahomes, like you're fine.
Yep, I agree. Is it worth talking defenses for 10 seconds? My general thought was just play them all on the slate. It was tough for me to. I could think of ways where all of them are optimal pretty easily. So to me, it's just kind of play all of them.
Yeah, and the pricing's weird on FanDuel, right? Like only $600 apart for all 4. Like there's no way like a cheap defense accidentally gets in there with a pick 6 or like scores a couple points. All these teams are priced the same. And if you go to the DraftKings, you look at the defense and $700 apart. No defense is priced higher than 3,000. So it's not like let's just jam this cheap defense in because they fit and they might get optimal that way. I think you seriously have to be the highest scoring defense to be optimal this week.
Yep. And I think we see ownership reflect that. It's pretty flat.
Yep.
Okay. Favorite low owned player on the whole slate? We'll say under 20%. Under 20% owned.
Okay, let me go back to the flex on FanDuel here. And if we scroll down, let's see here. I mean, Kittle technically qualifies. I think that's cheating. And maybe he gets over 20, but that's crazy to me. I'll go Gainwell again. I'll go Gainwell, which is crazy because he wasn't as popular last week, but still put up some points. But we got him sub 5% on FanDuel, so I think I'll go Gainwell and Kittle if he counts.
I would have given you Kittle.
Okay.
I think he's going to go low, but those are good ones. I'm going to go a little crazy. There's not a lot of options, but I'm going to go Watkins. That San Francisco defense, they just let people run deep. I feel very confident they're going to throw him a deep ball. Whether or not he catches it, is the question. But I think he's going to get a shot at it. And again, 5% owned guy, just instantly one catch. If you're over the field on him with Hurts, you've got a great chance to win some money.
I mean, he's won people 6 figures at least, maybe 7 figures on short slates before with one deep ball. So why not again? So this is the final question I'll ask you, Jack. We have obviously a lot of content planned for the Super Bowl. We'll be playing heavily in DFS, prop betting, obviously. Not from a fandom perspective, either rooting for teams or rooting for a good game, but from a DFS perspective, which 2 teams do you hope make the Super Bowl for building lineups?
Oh, that is a good question. Probably. I think I'm gonna say Philly and. I'd probably say Philly and Cincinnati. And I say that because they have multiple pass catchers that can be optimal, and usually some of them get cheated. Like Chase Higgins, usually one gets cheated. I mean, I guarantee you it'll be AJ Brown. He always goes lower than he should on Showdown because he's just more expensive. People play Goddard and Smith, so that'd be my preferred matchup from a DFS perspective.
I just don't want San Francisco, right? Because from a DFS perspective, like there's no other way a season ends than with a popular Kittle smashing on a Showdown slate. So I really don't want that. You and I have separate reasons to want that outcome for our FFPC teams. But from a Showdown perspective, there's nothing more miserable than a popular tight end that just smashes. At least Dalton Schultz can't do it to us anymore.
and like 40% McCaffrey captain,
Yeah.
optimal with 30-40% Kittle flex. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know. I just think, and then from a fan perspective, I don't know. San Francisco's kind of boring. They're a really good team, but
Yep.
I don't really want to watch that game.
Totally. All right.
Hearts out to people that are San Francisco fans. Just from an entertainment standpoint, not for me.
Yeah, all right, we're looking at this strategically. So, all right, guys, we've run long here. We appreciate you listening as always. Again, this is the second to last video that Jack and I will do. We'll be back about a week and a half from now before the Super Bowl. The plan for content for Occupy Fantasy for the Super Bowl, obviously we'll have the plug in the model and builder and all that, but we'll do separate videos for different contest types. We'll have a low risk video, a small field video, a FanDuel video, and a DraftKings video for large field contests. You'll see Jack on at least one of those. So to make sure you don't miss those, make sure you subscribe to the channel, get notified when we go live, upload these videos. Give us a thumbs up if you like the content. We appreciate it. It helps others find the video. Any questions, comment on this video below. We'll gladly help you out. Join our Discord server, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. Follow us on Twitter. You see the usernames on the screen here. Occupy Fantasy DFS Magic. For Jack, I'm Brian. Thanks for listening, and good luck in the conference championship games.